Hello and welcome to this OPTO beginners class. Here's what we're going to go through this morning. We'll look at what OPTO measures, how the test is structured, and how it works with norm groups and languages. After that, we'll dive into how to develop criteria, meaning what the position requires, and we'll do this with the help of OPTO behavioral analysis. Finally, we'll take a closer look at the reports available for OPTO and how to approach test interviews. But let's start with some facts about OPTO. OPTO is a normative personality test, meaning that we structure the questions in the test in a specific way. The test participant is presented with one statement at a time and responds on a scale from does not apply at all to applies very well, or something like this. This is what's known as the normative format. When the person has answered a series of such statements, we receive a result consisting of 20 aspects. These can be summarized at a higher level into our 8 dimensions, and we will look at all of these shortly. OPTO is based on the 5-factor model, allowing us, even at the aspect level, to examine which 5-factor trait each aspect measures. OPTO is also a performance filter. This isn't something we can claim without evidence, and we've proven it in various ways. What it means is that through some of our scales, we can distinguish efficiency between different results. This allows us to indicate that certain candidates will perform more effectively than others who scores lower on these particular scales. These scales relate back to the trait in the 5-factor model known as conscientiousness. To clarify, logical ability is still the best tool for predicting future performances, but if we also want to evaluate this in behaviors, we can do so in OPTO. Finally, we have what we call the person-job fit, which refers to the match between the candidate and the position, how well a certain job fits a person. Each candidate receives a match percentage, making it even easier to select the right person to move forward in the recruitment process. This is valuable whether you have 200 applicants or are working with sourcing and may only have one. Through person-job fit, we can also see what challenges the candidate might face if they don't match the position very well, making this aspect important. Perhaps even more so when you have fewer candidates rather than more. But more on that a bit later. Now let's look at some additional facts about OPTO. We use a scale to display scores called the STEN scale, which stands for Standard 10. This means that the scale ranges from 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest. Scores can be presented as STEN scores or simply as scores. What's useful to understand here is that the scale acts like a volume dial for behavior. If a person scores between 1 and 3, we call these passive behaviors. They are not very important to the person. They don't draw energy from exhibiting them, making them easier to change or adjust if needed. Scores of 4 to 7 indicate flexible behaviors. These are behaviors shown to a certain extent or in certain situations, but not necessarily all the time. At 8 to 10, we find strong behaviors, significant and noticeable behaviors. Scoring in this range indicates clear strengths, but in the wrong situation, these can become clear pitfalls as well. Naturally, pitfalls can also appear when comparing with the job requirements. A job might require a score of 4 or 5, and if you score a 10, it could become a pitfall, just as much as if you score a 1. It's worth noticing, however, that changing our strongest behaviors isn't easy. They have a significant impact and can be challenging to alter, if one even wants to. Now, let's look at our languages and norm groups, starting with language. OPTO is available in many languages, with new ones continually being added. It's also helpful to know that the candidate selects the language, so you as user don't need to and cannot influence this. And on to the norm groups. We have a benchmark for comparing our results. We use norm groups. These tell us what the most common behaviors are. Our norm groups represent the population of our respective countries, with the same distribution of men, women, managers, chefs, academics, etc., as in, for example, the Swedish population. When selecting a norm group, you should choose the one representing the country where the position is placed. So, if I work in a German company in Stockholm, I use the Swedish norm. Conversely, if it's a Swedish company in Berlin, I use the German norm. We also have an international norm, which can be used if a specific norm isn't available yet, or if the position operates heavily on an international level. However, keep in mind that the scores candidates receive will vary depending on the chosen norm group, so be thorough when selecting the appropriate norm. Information regarding languages and norm groups is available on our OPTO support site. Another thing useful for both you and the candidate is to understand the distribution of results within the norm group, as shown in the image. We call this a normal distribution, and as you can see, 70% of the norm group falls within a score range of 4 to 7 on each scale. It's also less common to score very high or very low on each scale. Finally, I should mention that we have something called standard error of measurement, which all measurement methods have. The standard error for OPTO is ±1, meaning if I take the test today and score 5, and if I take the test again soon, I likely score between 4 and 6, with 5 being the most probable score. Now it's time to talk about Spotlight, which can be a bit tricky to grasp. When the test person takes the test, they answer questions in groups of 7. They cannot assign the same score to more than one statement in that group. If they try to, they'll need to reprioritize and reassign. Once they've completed the group of 7, each response should be at a unique level. Then the process continues with a new set of 7 statements. If responses are assigned the same score, the test prompts the participant to reprioritize, requiring them to differentiate among the statements. Our system tracks how responses are adjusted per trait, as well as whether the adjustments show consistency. If someone consistently assigns a low initial score and then increases it, or assigns a high score initially and later lowers it, they receive a spotlight. This consistency must occur 4 or more times, making the spotlight marker fairly uncommon to obtain. In the reports, the spotlight appears as a small magnifying glass icon. The spotlight indicates behavioral flexibility. For instance, if I'm generally efficient, thrive in fast-paced environment, and push forward, this marker suggests there may be situations where I'm not as driven or as efficient. This could happen in contexts where I'm not in charge or when I'm new to certain tasks or environments. We don't know exactly why a behavior doesn't always manifest the same way, so this is something to explore in test interviews with a candidate. In those cases, you will present the score based on the behavior that is most common, known as the baseline behavior, and ask the candidate for an example of how it manifests. Once you have this, you should also ask in which situations the opposite behavior occurs. Giving you 2 examples. One for the baseline behavior and one for the adapted behavior. Note that the spotlight always applies on the aspect level. So if you conduct the interview at the dimension level, which is the most common, you'll need to check which specific aspect that has the spotlight. We'll return to this topic a bit later when discussing the test interview. Now that we've covered the construction of the test, it's time to examine our traits in more detail. In OPTO, we have 3 levels. The top level consists of groups, of which there are 3. The middle level consists of our 8 dimensions, and at the bottom we have our 20 aspects, It's also on the aspect level that we measure, which can feel reassuring. Here's what the structure looks like schematically. The groups are named People, Operation, and Exploration. The blue sections in the middle are the dimensions, and the aspects appear in gray at the bottom. We'll go through each of them in more detail. The first dimension, influence, is measured by assertiveness, communication, and confidence. Assertiveness measures the degree to which one takes the lead. How decisive am I? How much do I take charge? High scores here are often beneficial for managerial roles, where clear, direct leadership is essential. For example, high-ranking military officers who needs to be this decisive. In certain industries, it's also more common. When it's crucial that people listen to you and follow your direction, we expect a high score on this aspect. Coaching managers may benefit from scores around 4, 5, 6, or 7. Which allows space for others and emphasizing listening. Moving on to communication, which measures the degree to which one is expressive, not how well one expresses oneself, but how much one does. High scores, 8, 9, 10, on communication are expected in roles such as public speakers, actors, and certain types of salespeople who need to be highly expressive. Certain managerial roles that require frequent speaking also benefit from high scores here. This trait also includes a persuasion element, so keep that in mind. The last aspect under influence is confidence, which measures the degree to which one is self-assured, especially in social settings. People with high scores here feel comfortable and at ease even if they suddenly find themselves in the spotlight. They tend to enjoy mingling and feel comfortable in new social situations with many people. Generally, a high score here can be advantageous, but it becomes particularly important in roles where one must speak publicly, persuade others, convey ideas, or inspire people to follow their lead. So that was influence. Now we'll look at resilience. It's measured by stability and stress management, focusing on dealing with pressure and stress, but in two different ways. Stability measures the degree to which one keeps composure. A high score here indicates strong emotional control. A person can keep a cool head and set aside feelings of stress and frustration without showing much outward emotion. This trait is crucial in roles like emergency service personnel, police officers, surgeons, pilots, or negotiators. Positions where staying calm and keeping emotions in check is essential. Stress management measures how well high pressure is handled. If someone enjoys and thrives in an environment with a constant high workload and frequent new tasks, they will likely score high here. This is, again, relevant for high-stress roles, such as emergency services personnel and surgeons, but also applies to roles like stockbrokers, where the ability to handle intense, ongoing pressure is needed. Moving on to the dimension cooperation. It includes the aspects altruism, networking, and trust. Altruism measures the degree to which one is supportive, how much time and focus are dedicated to helping others throughout the workday. While it can be admirable to be highly supportive, this only aligns well with roles where supporting others is a part of the job. If it isn't, spending time helping others could detract from one's own tasks, which may not be productive. This potential pitfall exists when a high score conflicts with what the actual role requires. The job requirements always determine which score is most appropriate. High scores in altruism are ideal for roles like coach, psychologist, customer services, and other service-related jobs where listening to and supporting others is central. Networking measures how one cultivates relationships, with a strong emphasis on extraversion from the 5-factor model. A high score here indicates someone who enjoys working with others and gains energy from social interactions. They thrive on meeting new people. It's important to note that we're not measuring social skills, which is learnable, but rather where one derives energy. High scores in networking are essential for roles like sales, event hosting, and other customer-facing or sales-oriented positions where frequent interactions with new people is common, such as baristas, waiters, and receptionists. The final aspect in this group is called trust, which measures belief in the honesty of others, how trusting one is. It might seem intuitive that psychologists will score high here, but that's not necessarily the case. Instead, high trust is often found in service and sales roles where supporting others is the primary focus, and there's little need to question others' honesty. These are roles where giving people a second or even a third chance is acceptable when mistakes occur. Positions that don't require vigilance or critical approach. That concludes the first group. The middle group is called operation and includes the dimensions efficiency, delivery, and compliance, all of which are strongly aligned with the 5-factor dimension of conscientiousness. Efficiency is measured by the aspects drive, goal orientation, and industriousness. Drive measures commitment to ensuring progress, the degree to which one pushes forward, ensuring things don't come to a halt. High scores here are critical for some roles but beneficial for most. A person with a high drive score will likely be more efficient than someone with a low score. However, this behavior isn't without potential pitfalls. For instance, if someone constantly pushes others to keep moving, it can become overwhelming depending on how it's expressed. So, a higher score is advantageous strictly from an efficiency perspective, but should be balanced based on the demands of the role. Goal orientation measures the focus on achieving results, reaching the finishing line, while drive measures pushing forward. Goal orientation specifically gauges the desire to drive towards defined objects. Here, the focus is on the goal itself. Individuals with a high score set ambitious targets for themselves and often for their colleagues as well, making this trait especially valuable in roles with key performance indicators such as sales positions. Elite athletes will also likely score high on this scale. The final aspect is industriousness, and it measures diligence and self-discipline. When people talk about self-leadership, this is essentially what they mean. A person with a high score in industriousness will steadily work through tasks, even when more enticing tasks come up. They complete what they start and do so thoroughly. Like other traits, this is essential across many roles. The middle dimension is delivery, measured by the aspects structure and quality assurance. Structure measures the degree to which someone is organized, orderliness, and planning. Generally, a high score here is advantageous, particularly in roles involving law compliance or preparing for critical tasks, such as setting up instruments for a surgery. Certain industries, such as medicine and life science, may also place extra importance on high scores and structure. Quality assurance measures thoroughness and attention to detail. Roles that require high scores in this aspect are those where precision is essential, such as in fields where centimeters, millimeters, or even nanometers matter. Positions like software developers, accountants, and risk analysts in banking are examples where perfection and meticulousness are critical. The last dimension is called compliance and is measured by dutifulness and sincerity. These aspects are a bit more nuanced. Dutifulness measures the degree to which one does what is expected, making it relatively straightforward. This trait is generally important across all roles, as there are few, if any, positions where a passive behavior, scores 1, 2, 3, is beneficial. However, there are roles where a medium score still may be acceptable. The aspect sincerity is the hardest for us to measure and perhaps also the hardest to grasp. It measures the degree to which one is genuine and honest. For someone with a high score, it's extremely important to be and appear honest and authentic. With that said, a low score doesn't imply dishonesty. It doesn't mean that the person necessarily lies or manipulates. Rather, it suggests that they might not invest as much time or focus on displaying their honesty. You could say that they approach the truth with a bit more flexibility. We can also illustrate this scale with the following example. If you are in a store and pay with cash, and it turns out that you receive too much change back, which you only realize when you get home, someone with a high score in sincerity would likely return to give the extra money back, even if it's a small amount. Someone with a low score might instead think that they've probably overpaid at some point, that things will balance out, and may choose not to return the money. For those with a high score, it's simply important that others and themselves recognize them as an honest person. High scores in sincerity contribute to more ethical behavior and are particularly crucial in roles related to security, IT security, and senior leadership positions within an organization. Whistleblowers also tend to score high on this scale. Now we come to the last group. It's called exploration. The group includes the dimensions agility and innovation. Agility is measured by the aspects intellect and problem solving. Intellect measures openness to new knowledge, which is crucial in roles that involve constant inventions. Many IT roles require a high score in this area, as technology continuously advances, and keeping up while finding joy in learning is essential. This trait has become increasingly important over the past 10 to 15 years, as adaptability to change has become more critical in a rapidly evolving world. Problem-solving measures believe in one's ability to handle complexity. Someone with a high score here enjoys working with complex issues and wants to engage with them regularly. However, a strong interest in problem-solving doesn't necessarily indicate skill in it. To assess actual problem-solving ability, we need a cognitive test like ACE or CORE. OPTO only reflects the interest and energy derived from solving problems, not skill level. High scores in this trait are valuable in roles that involve significant problem solving, such as many positions in IT and R&D. The final dimension is innovation, measured by the aspects adaptability, ingenuity, and risk-taking. Adaptability measures adjustment to change, so high scores are common among change consultants, management consultants, researchers, and R&D teams. It's also valuable in marketing and IT roles. However, as with the other traits, this score reflects enjoyment and openness to change, not necessarily skill, which we would need to assess separately. Ingenuity measures the degree to which one has original ideas, essentially a measure of creativity. High scores in ingenuity are often found in artistic fields, R&D, marketing and development roles, as well as with fashion designers and similar creative professions. The final aspect is risk-taking, which measures the desire to be enterprising and energized by taking risks. High scores here indicate a tendency to take risks, even without knowing the exact consequences. This trait is commonly found in entrepreneurs, stockbrokers, and similar roles where risk-taking is a core part of the job. These are our 20 aspects, and they hold the key to understanding which candidate will best fit a given role, making it well worth diving deeper into. This topic of roles and who suits which position leads us into what we call criteria and our OPTO behavioral analysis. By criteria, we mean the specific requirements of the role. I often say, if you don't know what you're looking for, how will you know when you found it? Especially to managers who claim that they don't have time for a requirement meeting. To distinguish between a strong candidate and a less suitable one, we need to sit down and discuss the job requirements, because these requirements set the foundation. If this step is missed or misunderstood, it leads to issues down the line. The logic is simple. The tasks performed in the role demand specific behaviors, and those with these behaviors will be able to deliver more easily, fit better, and feel more comfortable in the role. For instance, if the role requires interacting with many new people daily, an extroverted person will find this easier than a more introverted person. This doesn't mean that the introverted person can't do the job, but it will take more energy from them because they'll need to adjust their natural behavior. The criteria produce what we call the person job fit, a percentage match that indicates how closely the candidate matches the requirements of the role. Criteria are set at the dimension level, but you don't need to set them on all 8 dimensions unless the role demands it. It's entirely based on the job requirements. When we set criteria and use them to assess candidates, we create a more objective, humane, and fair process, as all candidates are evaluated with the same tool against the same criteria. Criteria can also be adjusted throughout the process, if, for example, the job tasks change. You can apply criteria to all our tools and set up automatic workflows, such as for screening purposes. The criteria support the entire recruitment process, from the initial discussion about the job requirements, through job ad writing, evaluation, and all the way to the onboarding of the selected candidate. Criteria setting can feel tricky. How do you ensure accuracy? To address this, we've developed a tool called the OPTO Behavioral Analysis, which focuses on the actual tasks of the role. You'll receive 1 question per aspect, with 4 responses options for each. Once completed, you'll have generated criteria for all 8 dimensions, which can easily be entered into our system. You can also specify if certain traits are more or less important than the others to achieve a finely tuned set of criteria. A self-explanatory guide included, and the tool takes about 10 minutes to complete. You can access the tool through our OPTO support page on our website. You can either fill it out by yourself, having the hiring manager fill it out, or you can do it together for even more consensus. Now let's move on and take a closer look at how to conduct test interviews if you choose to do so. We'll also review which reports can be used for this purpose. Looking at how to conduct test interviews using our OPTO reports, there are various approaches to these interviews, and you're free to choose the style that suits you, but we recommend giving the candidate access to their report immediately after completion, which you can set up for automatic release in our system. You can review all 20 aspects we measure or focus only on the 8 dimensions, depending on your preference. It's essential, however, that both you and the candidate are working with the same level of detail, so ensure this is aligned before starting your assessment and sending out tests. The most modern approach is to provide feedback at the dimension level, focusing only on the traits where the candidate's results deviate from the role's criteria. This allows us to concentrate on how the candidate's profile aligns with the role's requirements, making it easier to assess what insights the hiring manager might consider if they decide to hire this candidate. Before delving into the results, there are some crucial preparations to make. The first and perhaps most important is to establish a good relationship with the test taker. It's easy to enter the conversation with too much authority, which could increase the anxiety of an already nervous candidate. Begin by clearly explaining the type of dialogue you're aiming for and how you plan to approach the results. Next, discuss OPTO briefly, covering the scales, norm groups, and distribution. If your organization is subject to GDPR or similar regulations, this is a good time to inform the candidate about this. We recommend clearly explaining the scale here, if not already done. It ranges from 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest. However, a high score isn't always the best, as it depends on the role's requirements. Scores from 1 to 3 indicate passive behaviors. 4 to 7 suggests flexible behaviors, and 8 to 10 reflect strong behaviors, where both strengths and potential pitfalls reside. Then dive into the results themselves. We'll cover the structure for that shortly, and wrap up by ensuring the candidate has clarity in the results and understanding of the next step in the recruitment process. To keep track of everything, we recommend using the OPTO checklist, where all of this is outlined. You can find it on the OPTO support page via our webpage. The OPTO overview is found on page 2 in most reports. But as this is text heavy, we recommend not reading it verbatim. Instead, use the checklist, which provides a more concise summary. When reviewing the results, whether at the dimension or aspect level, we handle the scales in the exact same way. Here on the right, you can see our score report, which displays the dimensions. The feedback format follows a consistent structure. Begin by stating the name of the trait and explain what it assesses. Tell the candidate what score they have gotten and read the accompanying score-specific description. Ask if they recognize this in themselves. Request an example. Ask follow-up questions if needed. If you're working on the dimension level, you may choose to review the underlying aspects, but only if you feel it's necessary. Then move on to the next trait. If you find it challenging to come up with good questions, we recommend using our interview guide, which is available at the same level as the candidate has received. If the person has received a spotlight, follow the same structure, but before reading the score-specific text, you can add that this description depicts the core behavior, the most common behavior. Then ask for an example. After that, you can ask the person when they would portray the situation-adapted behavior in order to get 2 examples. When wrapping up the interview, it's helpful to double-check that the candidate doesn't have any remaining questions about the results. You may choose to briefly summarize your notes, and then it's essential to request consent to share the report and your notes with the hiring manager, especially if you're in a country covered by GDPR. Finally, outline the next step of the recruitment process. Before we wrap up today, I'd like to promote an extra module available for OPTO. It's called OPTO Leadership and is based on 2 different leadership theories to help you recruit and develop leaders in a better way. Some of you who's watching may already have access to this module and will also receive training for it. However, if you don't have access and are curious, feel free to reach out to us to learn more. That's all for today. If you have any questions, you'll likely find many answers on the OPTO support page. The link is provided here to the right. You're also welcome to reach out to us. You can do so by phone on +46 8 32 42 42 or via email at support@master.se. Thank you for watching.